This is a Geek Leader podcast, and I'm your host, John Rossman. This show is all about helping us grow as leaders, become better technologists, and improve our lives both at work and at home. I hope you enjoy the show and learn a lot. Welcome to a Geek Leader podcast. I'm your host, John Rossman. And if you could, please do me a favor and take a moment and leave a rating and review in whatever podcast player you're listening to this on, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, doesn't matter. I would greatly appreciate it. And that feedback really helps get other listeners to the show. Also, if you're not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And if you feel so inclined, you can go to geekleader.com/tip and donate to the show. Thanks so much. All right, Geek Leaders, today I'm honored to have John Rossman on the show. He is the author of a book called Big Bet Leadership, which we're going to be talking about today. He helps with leadership and digital transformation and other types of consulting and business reinvention. So we're going to talk a lot about how we as leaders can use some of these concepts to grow our careers and become better leaders in general. Anyway, with that being said, John, welcome to the show.
John, nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, if you don't mind, just tell the audience a little bit about your background, how you got into digital transformation and leadership in general, and what that journey's been like for you.
Yeah, well, I guess the headline would be accidentally. So I was an engineer by background. I went to Oregon State University. I did a bunch of shop floor control applications and workflow application development and document management systems early in my career. And what I fell in love with was kind of the integration of data, technology, user experience, ergonomics, econometrics, and, essential workflow design, which is really like the basis of industrial engineering. Fast forward, I got to be an early executive at Amazon. I ran the launch of the marketplace business in 2002. I left Amazon. I was a partner at a firm called Alvarez & Marsal for 12 years. Really fun firm, really interesting clients, including the Gates Foundation for 8 years. And what I saw was like the power of the little anecdotes and stories and principles from Amazon. And so several years after I left Amazon, I released a book called The Amazon Way, followed that up with Think Like Amazon, 50 and a half ideas to become a digital leader. And kind of throughout this, all these opportunities to either come talk to companies about like their transformation and their struggles or participate in them. Along the way, I got to be the senior innovation advisor at T-Mobile for 3 years. My client, Kevin McCaffrey, who's the co-author of Big Bet Leadership, he was responsible for new business incubation at T-Mobile. We stripped down all the stuff from Amazon, built it back up for this purpose-built application at T-Mobile. And out of that came a lot of learnings. And we wrote the book that we wish we had had at T-Mobile, which is called Big Bet Leadership, Your Transformation Playbook for Winning in the Hyper Digital Era. And that's the short but fairly complete story of kind of how I got here and some of the things I've gotten to do along the way.
Cool. So when it comes to, putting together a book, what is that process like for you? Because you've done it a few times and you've probably gotten pretty good at it by now. What do you don't like about that?
You would think you're making a lot of assumptions there and everything. This was the first book that I had a co-author, but to me, the thing I churn on, like I really work hard on, is like the promise to the customer. Like, what's the audience going to get out of this book that is, kind of new, creates a curiosity gap, is unique, and that is authentically something I believe in, right? Like to me, like it's got to be from my soul, from like what I know and what I believe and what I use in my client work and that I've heard and everything. And so I work on that kind of outline really, really hard. But once I have that, I have a really good kind of template for what the book is going to be. It's essentially kind of paint by numbers for me after that. Kevin and I, we worked on this book kind of stem to stern for a year, but that included a bunch of, kind of publication time frame in that and everything too. So once I know the book, the title, the chapters, and what each chapter is going to do, it's a pretty efficient process. Getting that correct, though, is what I work on hard. I've probably written 10 book proposals that I haven't done because I couldn't get convicted on that part of the book.
Mm. Wait, when you mean convicted, you mean like truly bought in and like
Exactly. Which is in essence a big part of big bet leadership, which is you have to persecute these ideas before you proceed on them. And that's what happens in so many transformations or initiatives. A big bet is essentially any strategy or plan that has high ambition, but comes loaded with a bunch of risks and dependencies and unknown unknowns to it. And in my experience, what I find is organizations proceed on these initiatives without really persecuting or being convicted on either the problem they are trying to solve or their hypothesis as like, what's it really going to look like? How's it going to operate? Why are we doing this relative to all the other things we should do? Should we do this? I go through the same exact process on the things that I'm considering in my life and my career, which is persecuting the concept before you commit to it.
Hmm. Yeah. And so what you're saying reminded me of a quote in your book that I read it several times and I really like it. It was the Michelangelo quote on chapter 4. I don't know if you remember that. It's
I
the
do.
greater danger of most of us lies not in setting our aim too high and falling short, but setting our aim too low and achieving the mark. Do you think that part of that is because of fear, or do you think it's just because of like um, a lack of buying into the idea and really like what you're talking about, persecuting it, going through it?
I think it could be both those and some others. But what's funny is you picked the quote that I relate to personally in my own journey the most out of this book, because it's like, I grew up in a family that didn't have high expectations, certainly didn't have high expectations for me. I tell people, and this is true, I was voted most likely to be a truck driver by my graduating class. And it's been really this career in my life that's opened me up to like, God, the thing I personally have to work on more is having ambition to be better. And I find that same thing in so many companies, which is like they have mediocre ambition. And more importantly, mediocrity has become the standard for kind of like what they shoot for in how they work together. Their standards are poor. Like, and so like, I think that truly is the bigger challenge, is that we take on work, we take on projects, we pursue things without really having the right ambition to begin with.
Mm. Yeah, for sure. I feel like some of it is pressure just because, it's what we should be doing. It's what we think we should be doing, or it's what the other people are doing. So we need to start doing that too without really thinking it through. And go ahead.
And let me build on that. Like, there's a ton of biases and pressures that both individuals face as well as kind of organizations face together, right? Like, let's break down just a few of those right now, because you're getting at the heart of the why this matters versus the tactics that go throughout the book and everything. The why it matters is because we are programmed as both individuals and institutions to focus on incrementalism, right? Incrementalism is like, once we have something figured out, like the best and easiest thing to do is to just do little edge improvements around it versus a rethinking of it, which is akin to the innovator's dilemma, which is successful companies become blind to the upstart that typically approaches with new technology and a bottoms up approach to the market. We have a bias called short-termism, which is the natural orientation to prioritize short-term benefits, even when we know that it costs us long-term results. And we suffer from sunk cost fallacy, which oftentimes leads us to like, we're into it this far, we might as well keep going and things like that, and many other biases. And that's where we have to start to become aware of these pressures and how they compromise long-term value creation and creating durability in companies. Company lives are really very, very short. And I think, what leaders need to do is balance both kind of that short-term optimization with the long-term enterprise value creation and be a steward for the future generations that come behind us. And I think all too often it's way too easy, both personally and for the organization, to just basically kick the can down the road and have short-termism be the guiding light. And that's what leads us to taking on just incremental things with a low ambition. And I think that there's just a few companies out there who have really created this playbook of how do we do both, right? How do we both pursue operational excellence and incremental innovation and create a playbook for high ambition, next generation businesses and capabilities? Amazon is one of those companies that does that, not the only one. And what we did in Big Bet Leadership is we captured the essence of those companies and those leaders. We call them Big Bet Legends in the book. We try to boil it down to like, hey, in our experience, we see these leaders doing 3 things differently when it comes to this transformation mindset than most other really good operational leaders. And those 3 habits are: they create clarity, they maintain velocity, and they accelerate risk and value. You and I have been talking a little bit about the first of those habits, which is around creating clarity and debating and persecuting and being convicted on a concept. Because within a company, the challenge isn't having good ideas for transformation or innovation. It's in having too many good ideas.
Yes.
But you have to pick a couple and really focus to win on those ideas. This is the process of really thinking those things through and becoming convicted, experimenting before you actually start building anything by actually defining it and debating it much better.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, when I think about it, it's like you want to spread in too many different directions. And we go back to Amazon. You mentioned Amazon, and you know what they did, you know, with maintaining their online store, but also spinning off AWS and realizing the business benefit of that is just phenomenal. You know, that's when you think about, you know, thinking big but betting small. That's just a huge, you know, part of their business now. And they took something that they were already doing for themselves as their own customers and kind of rolled it into something they could sell and productize.
A little nuance on that story. So I was there when like the genesis of AWS happened. We had a really bad holiday in 2003. The website kept tipping over, you know, all sorts of underperformance. We came back from holiday and we were like, at that point, every team ran their own infrastructure. And we said, hey, we got to centralize infrastructure. We're going to, you know, make it self-service so the teams can provision and manage hardware and computing capacity. And it was Bezos and Rick Dalzell who said, like, hey, that's a great concept. But this, if you only do this internally, it'll never become good enough, because internal customers are easy customers because your friends, your colleagues together. Only external customers will be demanding customers. So you're going to turn this inside out. You're going to make it self-service. And that's when they found that developers loved this concept of kind of on-demand infrastructure, on-demand compute. And they're like, oh, there's a business there. And that's when they started defining the roadmap and building out AWS, right? And so those are some of the tricks of how to recognize and pursue these things is that type of trick of like, you know, essentially, how can the downside of this concept still have an upside to it and make the upside as big as possible? That's the mindset of a Big Bet legend.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things you talk about a lot in your book is outcomes and OKRs and for companies
I don't talk a lot about OKRs. I talk about outcomes.
Outcomes. Yeah. I guess I always relate outcomes to OKRs. Explain to me why it's important to think about outcomes when it comes to in digital transformation in general.
Yeah. So to build on some of the things we've already talked about, teams don't do a good job of really recognizing the problem and really like specifying the problem, why it matters to the customer, why it matters to the operator, why it matters to the CFO and everything. We do an even lazier job at defining like, what's the future state? What happens is we leap to a vague solution, tends to be a technology-oriented solution and not a holistic solution. And it's at a vague level. And then what we we quickly become journey oriented. Oh, here's the steps we're going to do to get there and everything, right? So we start getting into the journey versus getting really clear about the outcome and what are the things that really have to be true in order for this outcome to happen, right? So if we have a holistic definition of what this outcome is, who the users are, why they love it, why the financials are our advantage, what the uptime, throughput, quality, features are of this, and just focus on that. And then ask the question, well, what's really hard about that? Like, what are the assumptions or the risks relative to that? Then we're becoming much more targeted in what are the real risks behind this future state. And then we can do the thing that's unnatural, which is we can figure out a way to bring those things forward and design a deliberate, targeted test to explore, to understand that particular aspect of this future state concept. So what we do is we de-risk this concept before we actually commit to it. So that's the third critical habit. Accelerate risk and value, deferring big commitments until this big bet is just a big good idea because we've de-risked it, except for a little matter of execution. But those things we tend to be good at. But it's the non-execution risks that tend to be the real buggers that we put off until we launch it down the road.
And what's an example of those risks, those non-executing risks?
Like customer acquisition costs, consumption costs, activation fees, real utilization, churn rates, the types of things that the real business case is booked on, but especially technologists, but really everybody, what they quickly do is they boil it down to a technology or a product or feature understanding versus the real outcome of what we're trying to get to, which is a user, a feature, a benefit. And that's why don't immediately jump to the journey that we need to go on. Take a little longer, not a whole lot longer, but a little longer in just really defining the future state so that we can taste it, we can feel it, we know, like, oh, I can picture operating in this environment. Then what you'll do is you really understand, like, oh, here are the things I'm really assuming about this. Okay, now we can deal with those things.
Yeah, no, I think that's good because I see it all the time, and especially in technology, where we want to jump into the solution of the problem really quickly before defining what the outcomes are of doing that, including all those risks that you're talking about there. We'll start building something and writing code before we even really like flesh it out. So yeah,
and this is really built off of, kind of Amazon has this pretty well understood kind of working backwards approach. We, again, as I said, like we rewired that specifically for T-Mobile, and we needed to bring a team and an organization along who didn't know how to do kind of these narratives and how to debate them properly and everything. So we had to break them down. We had to design them much better. That's what we did in Big Bet Leadership was like, okay, this concept of writing and debating, super important. But teams that don't know how to do this, like they need more specification, more clarification in how to do that. And that's what we did in Big Bet Leadership was like, we broke it down. You're going to write a what sucks memo. You're going to write an outcome definition memo. You're going to write an outcome financial memo. You're going to write a future press release. You're going to write a three futures memo. Like, and we really brought those things to life. And when you buy the book, you also get a bunch of free online tools at bigbetleadership.com that take these concepts from the book. We kept the book very readable, pretty thin. But we unpacked all those into journals. We have a set of prompts that help you do this. We have a pre-flight checklist. We have a bunch of really cool tools to help you transition this into action.
So tell me about how, the prompts and how is AI kind of affecting some of the digital transformation things that you're seeing today?
Well, two ways. One is like what's feasible, right? So, AI is, another piece of magic in the sorcerer's bag of magic tricks that you can do, right? So you can authentically do things that you couldn't do before. You can't do everything, and you still have to provide, kind of auditability and measurability and stability and all those other things along with it. But it truly is a new kit, right? So you can solve problems, different types of problems with better outcomes than you could before. But it also drives the way that you do this work. AI is like current capabilities really well designed to do this job of like, hey, be my co-thinker along with this, right? If you take a really good framework, which is what big bet leadership is, it's a set of frameworks for how to do this, and a set of well-engineered prompts, that's what we're giving you, and AI, like you can rip on these memos and have a conversation that really helps you think through this better. Co-author of Big Bet Leadership, Kevin McCaffrey, he ran strategy at T-Mobile. He had a big team of very capable people. His perspective is, if I had this book, those prompts, and AI, I could have taken a team of 10 down to a team of 3, and instead of 2-week turnaround on like a key market assessment that the CEO was asking for or something like that, we would typically turn things around in 2 days. Like that's what AI does. You still got to own the problem. You got to own the work and the intellectual aspects of it. But it really is like having the world's best staff consultant right at your side.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's amazing how you can just ask it, like you can throw your idea up there. And I've uploaded spreadsheets with like, what I thought was well thought out plans. I said, what am I missing here? Where are the holes here? And it's come through and just said, oh, well, you forgot about this part, or, you were expecting to be here this day, but this thing's closed. So, yeah.
Yeah. And when you do that, again, with a really well-engineered prompt, then that takes it from good to great. And the way we designed our prompts is to be an interactive conversation on like, what is it that really sucks? What's the outcome? What's your financial case and the cost you have to control? Like we put the book, the frameworks into action and made it a two-way dialogue with AI that really springboards your thinking and the optionality that you have around things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think it's just, it's an incredible way of thinking about things, and just, being able to ask like, where am I overthinking this? Am I underthinking this? And having somebody you can bounce ideas off of, even like on a general leadership perspective, I guess you would say. Like I've used ChatGPT and other things where I said like, I have an employee I'm getting ready to have a one-on-one with. This is an issue that I'm dealing with. How would it best be approached? How can I best approach this without like hurting their feelings or something like that? And it'll give me almost this script that I can just kind of, okay, yeah, I'll go down that path. That sounds good. And it's worked out very well.
Especially on like problem solving, reframing a problem is one of the most powerful, easy things you can do to just see the problem in a different light, right? How do you get to true root cause? How do you ask the 5 whys behind a situation? Just doing that, interactive reframing of a problem helps you see it differently, helps you see it more holistically, helps you get to root cause and personal accountability so much better and everything. Like those are, that's what being AI first is really about, is like every step along the way is go, how can AI make me smarter, faster, better relative to this?
Yeah, I like what you said there. AI first, it's kind of like, go back, 10 years ago, everybody was mobile first. Every application had to be built mobile first. And now we're thinking like AI first and going down that path. And it does feel like we're on the next phase of an industrial revolution. Like we're getting ready to jump into that next one where things will be really disruptive. I think it's important to go through some of the things that you have in your book when it comes to, the memos and actually putting the time in to think it through and to put it down about what changes are going to be happening and how we can be relevant during those changes as a business.
Well, I mean, you're getting back to the why this is important, right? And that's where we start the book. So the subtitle of the book is Your Transformation Playbook for Winning in the Hyperdigital Era. What's the hyperdigital era? So, the way we frame it is we think that there's 3 mega forces that are going to be shaping our economy and society in the next 25 years. And those 3 mega forces are technology, AI, quantum computing, fusion energy. There's a number of them together that will really reshape. But that's just one megaforce. The second megaforce is the aging of our workforce, right? And the scarcity of supply of skilled talent is going to be a major driver that forces us to reinvent how work gets done and to seek higher productivity. If you look at the productivity gains of white collar back office productivity over the past 25 years, it's been on a pretty mild 1, maybe 2% yearly. That's going to change. And then the third mega force that we can't ignore is kind of the committed spending and indebtedness of our country. That mega force is going to force us to solve that debt problem. And the way we do that is by innovating, by growing the economy at a more productive basis than we do today. And I think those three mega forces combined with the fuse of aggressive capital that's out there who have proven their thesis of how to reinvent businesses from the past 25 years, that's going to create dramatic opportunity and dramatic change. And so companies have this wicked choice in front of them, right? So here's the wicked choice. I know that over 80% of all these transformations, all these big bets fail. And they fail for lots of reasons. Only 0.5% are successful on time, on budget, and most importantly, on benefit. Okay, so that's choice one of the wicked choice. But here's the other wicked choice. Do nothing, right? That doesn't work either. So how do you actually manage that wicked choice that's in front of us, which is, I know I'm going to fail, but bold moves and big bets are the only way that I create new competitive advantage. Well, we have to become better at being successful at these high ambition, high risk situations. That's why we wrote Big Bet Leadership. This is our version of what the playbook should be. We maybe didn't capture everything. We maybe didn't nail it, but at least we know the need is there. Like, we have to become better at pulling off these types of high ambition, high risk endeavors.
Yeah, absolutely. And when it comes to like next steps for a leader when they're going through something like this, they're trying to figure out what the big bet's going to be and where they're going to take this and mitigate the risk and going through all those things. What are the next steps to validate the performance of it?
Well, you have to have a testing plan, right? And that's where, these things fail for lots of reasons. One of the reasons they fail is because we really don't test a concept. We just like plow forward to it. We commit to it before we've de-risked it. So once you understand the big bet and why you're going to pursue this one, then it's like, what are the fastest, cheapest ways that I can de-risk this, holding back the temptation of what everybody wants to do once they've fallen in love with this concept? Everybody just wants to go. They want to commit. You got to bridle that enthusiasm, right? And we wrap up the book with this one final piece of advice, which is to be an active skeptic. Active meaning like you need to have a portfolio of these. You need to be engaging in this journey, but you have to be a skeptic every single step of the way. Skeptic isn't a negative thing. A skeptic means somebody who like figures out, how do I test something and have a sufficient factual basis before I go big on it? That's the secret of surviving these big bets, both as a company as well as for individual careers, is you have to be an active skeptic.
Yeah, I like that. I like the idea of being active.
And then you have to do all the other things around this that you do. So we wrote a bunch of chapters about kind of the championship habits of what you need to do around communication, around goal setting, around incentive systems, around team setup, around the environment setup. Like, there's a bunch of predictable things that you have to do well around it to be successful. And then the last part of the book is around, the management systems that are needed, right? Because you need a different governance mindset around these than your typical, like, grind everything to a halt so that we can't possibly make one error type of risk management mindset. Like, there's a much better mindset to governance this. And that's what we tried to outline in the third section of the book.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about the communication strategies and things that are important, because, I've worked in some companies where communication is, transparent and very open, and other ones where it's very siloed and very difficult to get anything out of anybody.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about your take on it.
Yeah. So even in those areas where they're transparent, I think they make a common mistake, which is that they talk in generalities, right? And so they talk about the burning platform, like, hey, this is why we have to change. Like, our results aren't good, or our customers don't love us, or we're losing market share. It's like, okay, I got it. Like we need to do something. Those types of communications can only take you so far. And then maybe they talk about like, okay, here's the journey we're going on. But what they leave out is they don't specify what's it going to feel like when we're at the end. And they don't indicate the calculated risk nature of this, right? So guess what? If you do this thinking and outcomes work up front, you've got all the fodder, we call it the communications quiver, to do the job that needs to be done, which is to talk specifically and to use stories that specify, here's the real problem we are solving. Here's our hypothesis for what it's going to feel like for a customer. Wrap it in a story and then repeat. You have to be the chief repeating officer relative to this story. If I think about all the really amazing talents Jeff Bezos had, I think the one that doesn't get talked enough is about his strategic communication capability. The Amazon leadership principles. I wrote the book on the Amazon leadership principles called The Amazon Way. The Amazon leadership principles were just an example of how Bezos framed, like, here's how we're going to work together. Here's how we are going to prioritize. Here's what standards matter. He codified those things in a set of leadership principles. Brilliant chief repeating officer communication standpoint. His annual shareholder letter, starting with the 1997 shareholder letter that gets repeated on the back of every single annual shareholder letter. Another way of being a strategic communications expert. That's the type of communication that's needed. Simple, but specific, authentic about the problem we are solving, where we're going, and the journey largely led by experimentation that we're going on. That actually helps people dial into what's my role and how do I help and how is this going to impact me?
Yeah, no, I think that's really good. Really good stuff. What are we missing? What's the last thing that we should be talking about as we try to wrap this up, that leaders need to be paying attention to, and what are they looking to get out of your book?
I think we've touched on the vast majority, which is we have to have higher ambition in our company. We have to take more calculated risks, but there's a right way to take those calculated risks. That's how you create durable, distinguished competitive advantage and a culture and a team that loves solving hard problems. Like once you get in this mode, it is so energetic. You'll attract the right talent for this type of atmosphere. You'll repair the talent that just wants to, kind of maintain and complain about the current state, but not do anything about it. That gets the whole system working together better than it is today.
Yeah, absolutely. John, it's been a great conversation. I really appreciate having you on and enlightening us on some of these things that we talking about. How can people connect with you online, pick up a copy of your book, and learn more?
Yeah, well, the book available at Amazon, of course. It's great hardcover, Kindle, great audio version. You can connect with me on LinkedIn, John Rossman, and I write a weekly Substack called the Digital Leader Newsletter. You can find that on Substack.
Awesome. And I'll put that links in the show notes too at geekleader.com so people can go there and click through. And again, John, thanks so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, John.
Hope you enjoyed the show. Please go to geekleader.com to learn more about what this guest is up to. Click on their links and connect with them online. I would also greatly appreciate it if you could leave me a rating and review in Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to the show. And make sure you've subscribed if you haven't already. And if you feel so inclined, you can leave me a tip by going to geekleader.com/tip.